Only in professional cycling is the job's ultimate reward also the shirt the race leader wears for work. And this year, the yellow jersey is 100 years old. Could probably do with a wash.
The yellow jersey has got dizzy. It's never known on whose shoulders it was going to be worn the day after.
A massive pile up on the road. The yellow jersey has gone.
The yellow jersey has gone down. One of the riders down is Chris Baumann.
My goodness, I've never seen anything like this. The yellow jersey is running up the Tour de France.
Fignon is bouncing off the barriers here. He's lost the Tour de France by 8 seconds. Can you believe that?
He is an absolute champion.
Two greatest riders have ripped the field apart.
The injury in the engine, look at his face. Bradley Wiggins punches the sky.
Froome is unstoppable, the greatest stage racer of his generation.
And Thomas is going to win an Alpe d'Huez in the yellow jersey. Geraint Thomas has just won the 2018 Tour de France.
Now, 286 riders have worn the yellow jersey since it was introduced on stage 11 of the 1919 Tour. And last year, Geraint Thomas became the 52nd of them to wear it in Paris as the winner of the race. Of course, those figures come loaded with all the usual asterisks and pharmacological footnotes that tend to plague Tour history. But let's not start questioning the official record on day one, or we'll never get anywhere. The key thing is that Thomas is here to defend his title. His teammate Chris Froome, who was looking to join the elite group of riders with 5 Tour wins, is not. Froome, as I'm sure you all know, is recovering from a horrible crash suffered while wrecking the time trial course at the Dauphiné last month. And he was joined less life-changingly on the list of withdrawals by Tom Dumoulin, still feeling the after-effects of a crash that had already put him out of the Giro. That removed from the reckoning the riders who occupied steps 2 and 3 of last year's final podium. So when Thomas himself went down in the Tour of Switzerland 3 weeks ago, Ineos decided not to push their luck and withdrew him from the race. They still won it, though, with the third youngest and possibly most talented of their GC options, Egan Bernal, the brilliant 22-year-old Colombian. He arrives for their first tour under the Ineos branding as the only rider on the 8-man roster to have actually won a stage race this season. That's earned him the status of co-leader with Thomas, although not the right to wear race number 1.
Geraint, it's been a couple of weeks since your crash at the Tour of Switzerland. First of all, how have you recovered? How are you?
Yeah, fine. I think if I hadn't have cut my eye, well, and hit my head, I would have been able to continue, like, happily. Just the doc, for more precaution, really stopped me. And so I only had 2 days off the bike and no real concussion symptoms. So was straight back training by the Friday. So yeah, I don't think physically it hasn't really affected too much. I was still able to train well and everything. It was more just it would have been good for the confidence and just for a race, you know, just that's why we train really, isn't it, to race. And I was really looking forward to Swiss, so that was the only disappointing thing. But I think for this race, I think there's no real negatives really, other than missing out on some racing with Egan as well. But yeah, it's a lot more sort of spotlight, I guess. But yeah, I just kind of just take it as it comes really. I just try to just treat it as I always have, and yeah, time will tell if it works out. But I think, you know, it's great to just have Egan alongside me as well, and having those 2 strong cards to play, it's always good. You know, it shares the pressure a bit more, you know, rather than the whole team all pinned their hopes on one guy. And so I think it can work in our favour for sure.
People are still calling you the favourite. Do you consider yourself the favourite?
Oh, I haven't thought about that at all, really. That's for the bookies and stuff. I'm not even allowed to bet on it, am I? So, but I think it's nice. It's obviously humbling to be people to say I'm the favourite. It's the biggest bike race in the world, so that's a nice feeling. But yeah, I've just, as always, just worried about myself and trying to get in the best shape here and try and race as I want to race. And yeah, what will be will be.
Now, Thomas and Bernal are 1 and 2 in the betting as well as the Ineos squad list, but not necessarily in that order. Most bookies have Bernal as the slight favourite, with Jakob Fuglsang, who won the Dauphiné last month, the only other rider on odds shorter than 10 to 1. Adam Yates, Richie Porte and Nairo Quintana are all ahead of the French favourite Thibaut Pinot. Yates is also on the list of riders who didn't finish what was supposed to be their final warm-up for the Tour, succumbing to a stomach bug on the final day of the Dauphiné when he was lying second. His brother, who rode the Giro in May, has been drafted in to help him, making this the first Tour the twins have ridden together since 2015.
Adam, so the last time we saw you, you were stepping off at the Dauphiné Libéré. How are you now?
Yeah, I'm good. Not sure what exactly happened. We think it's, you know, a bit of debris off the road. The day before it was raining pretty hard, and there was road caked in, you know, everything. So yeah. But to be honest, I came around pretty quick. 2 days later, I was training pretty much like normal, and the last 2 weeks have been perfect. No hiccups, no stress. So everything's running pretty smoothly.
Fantastic. And you've got your brother in recruited to help out.
Yeah, he's here. He wasn't 100% if he was going to be here. But in the end, he is. He's going to play a similar role to what I did in the Vuelta. In the Vuelta, you wouldn't have seen me until the last week, so he's going to hopefully play a similar role. Hopefully, I won't see him for 2 weeks, and then the last week he can help me out in the mountains.
Now, the Yellow Jersey Centenary is also the 50th anniversary of the first Tour win by the man who's worn it most. And this year's route honours Eddy Merckx with 2 days in Brussels, today's road stage and a team time trial tomorrow. Once the race reaches France, the first face-off among the likely winners this year will be the climb to La Planche des Belles Filles, which has predicted the final Yellow Jersey in each of its 3 previous appearances. From the Vosges, the race heads southwest through the Massif Central towards the Pyrenees, and it's a long run, 10 stages before the first rest day. The lone time trial is stage 13, so the climbers will enter the high mountains knowing exactly what they have to do to win. And the mountains are high. The Col du Tourmalet is the first of 7 climbs over 2,000 metres. The other 6 are all in the Alps on the final 3 days of racing, which will culminate at the ski resort of Val Thorens. Once the race is decided, there's the customary relocation from mountain top to Paris suburb for the final stage into the capital 3 weeks tomorrow. With an unprecedented 3 mountaintop finishes of more than 2,000 metres, the race director is calling this the highest tour in history, which is just asking for trouble, or at least a few jokes. But there's also an attempt to persuade the favourites not to wait until the final climbs to start racing each other. This year, 8 other mountains along the way will carry bonuses of 8, 5 and 2 seconds for the first 3 riders over the top. Now, there are 6 British riders in this year's race. Luke Rowe will be riding for Thomas and Bernal, Simon Yates for Adam, Alex Dowsett lending his power to the Katusha Alpecin effort, and Steve Cummings riding for himself and Dimension Data, who've decided that Mark Cavendish, the greatest sprinter in Tour history, is not worth a place on this year's team. All stages are live on ITV4 from start to finish. Highlights are where they always are, 7 o'clock in the evening. And starting on Monday, Matt Smith will be in London with a daily guest. And starting now, I'll be here, wherever here happens to be. Brussels, of course, for the start, with David Miller, who you know, and Pete Kennaugh, who you also know, but who's new to life on this side of the safety barrier, having started his career with Sky and finished it this season with Bora Hansgrohe. And Pete, it seems odd, since we've got so little time and there's so much to talk about, to start with an absentee, but the fact that Chris Froome isn't here changes this whole race before it starts.
Massively, not just for Team Ineos, but for all the other competitors in the Tour de France. I don't think it changes the tactics of Team Ineos too much. You'll still have Geraint Thomas, Bernal, Wout Poels behind them. I think they'll try and save Wout as much as possible and use the other guys as just pure domestics.
Yeah, how do you see the Sky leadership contest, or probably not contest, playing out, David? Last year, Geraint Thomas was the junior partner. This year, he's the senior, but he's not a prima donna, is he?
No, he certainly isn't. I think it actually clarifies the situation because let's not forget, Geraint Thomas is the defending champion. He won, for me, I believe, in a magisterial fashion last year. Egan Bernal is young. He's clearly very respectful to the team. He will be the super lieutenant, and it would take a disaster for him to assume leadership, in my opinion. And
Ineos, no doubt, will try to enforce the usual template, but there's no doubt that all the other contenders sense a more open race. Do you sense that?
I mean, I don't know. I've thought a lot about it, and I don't think so. I think Ineos have got a very strong team. They've got the defending champion. They're the most drilled, the most prepared team for this. They know what to do. They've done it repeatedly. Yes, that behind Geraint Thomas and Ineos, perhaps it's a lot more open, and it's quite a different course to what we're used to, so it is better for the climbers. So there is an open race, but I still believe in Geraint Thomas and Team Ineos.
Who else are you looking for, Pete, in this race? Jakob Fuglsang is the bookies' third favourite, although he's never really shown he can compete in a 3-week stage race. Adam Yates, Nairo Quintana, who is in yet another leadership contest at Movistar.
Yeah, I believe slightly different to David, actually. I think it's going to be quite open race. I think if you look at the way the Dauphiné was raced, full gas from start to finish, with guys like Pinot just willing to put it all out there. And this year seems like a very different style of racing for me from what we've seen in previous years in the build-up to the Tour de France. There's a lot of unknowns, Richie Porte, for example, and the Yates, so it's going to be a great tour to watch.
Fascinating. All right, let's get on with it then. Stage 1, which according to the official itinerary starts in Bruxelles and finishes in Brussels. So it's got all the linguistic, diplomatic and, as we'll see, historical bases covered to end up back where it started. 194.5 kilometres out and back today, and the first jersey of the day, the polka dots, will be decided inside 50 kilometres on the 2 early climbs. So there'll be a fight to get in the breakaway, but it has no chance of staying away. The riders pass through Eddy Merckx's childhood home, Woluwe-Saint-Pierre, on the run-in, and the race will doubtless come back together for a bunch finish in front of the Royal Palace. Talking of royalty, the first Brussels Grand Départ for 61 years was graced by the presence of Eddy Merckx in the race director's car for the ceremonial rollout and soaking up the adoration of the crowd like a benevolent despot. Soaking up the sun too. I hope he had some Factor 50 on. A few kilometres in, the rollout rolled to a halt to be greeted by King Philippe, second in line to the Belgian throne, I believe, after Eddy Merckx, although I might have got that wrong. And when the flag finally dropped, it was Belgian cycling's current great star, or one of them at least, Greg van Avermaet, who attacked. 3 riders were brave enough or foolhardy enough to go with him, his fellow Belgian Sandro Merisa, Mads Wirtz, Katusha Alpecin Swiss rider, and the Eritrean national champion Nathaniel Behani of Cofidis. Those 4 hit the foot of the Mer de Grammont with a handy lead.
This is where it starts to get really steep when they come around this corner, and this is the final few hundred metres, and this is where it's going to be. It's at your advantage to be at the front here, because you can just see how bumpy the cobblestones get and how steep it will become as you turn left here. And Greg van Avermaet is just going to hold that corner, hold the left-hand side of the road, and make sure that nobody can come around him.
Holding his wheel okay, little slip there, possibly from the Danish rider from Katusha Alpecin. Mertens looking strong though, Behani still in the mix. 4 riders there, looks like Mads Wirtz wants to get back out of the saddle now as Van Avermaet just injects a little bit more power through those cranks, putting Behani into a little bit of bother. But Mertens and Mads Wirtz are right there on the wheel of Greg Van Avermaet. He hasn't dislodged them yet. Behani's been dropped though.
Look at this, so he's just literally dragging, attacking from the front there. You can see how he's controlling it, sweeping them across the road from one side to the other. And but yeah, this is going to be, it's a battle for Greg van Avermaet. He is having to go very deep.
Belgium rises to the top. 2 Belgian riders on the Mur. The opening climb of the 2019 Tour de France. Just 2 points available in the King of the Mountains competition, but look at the battle for them. Greg van Avermaet, the big favourite, still hasn't disposed of Sandro Mertens, but he gets there. He takes 2 points, and Van Avermaet, doesn't matter what anyone else does now, he has won the Mur climb. He could go on to win the Bosberg as well, and he will be the King of the Mountains at the end of the day. The Olympic champion, the Belgian hero, has risen to the top, but it was hard work, and credit to Sandro Mertens for pushing him all the way.
Now, having secured his place on the podium for the day, Van Avermaet sat up and drifted back to the pack. The other 3 pressed on towards the next point of interest, a 1,900-metre stretch of cobbles, with their lead dropping as jockeying for position heading into it started in the peloton behind.
There they are, the cobblestones of stage 1 on the road to Brussels. Do not adjust your sets. This isn't Paris-Roubaix, this is the Tour de France. And the 3 riders who are heading the race have got a diminished advantage of just 40 seconds now. The peloton are wary of the dangers and the pitfalls here, and they have started to drag race onto the cobbled sector that the 3 riders find themselves on now. Nathaniel Behani caught between Mads Wirtz, the Danish rider from Katusha Alpecin, and Mertens, as Peter Sagan's Bora Hansgrohe start to really lay it down, and the peloton now is on the cobbles. Big Marcus Burkhardt is drilling it on the front for Peter Sagan's team, and Sagan himself there is sitting in about 5th or 6th wheel. So strong showing from Sagan's team. That's what the onboard camera, live pictures now from the middle of the peloton, that's what the cobblestones look like. Kevin van Melzen from Wanty Gobert is carrying those images. Extraordinary. And mechanicals, always a potential here, as Elia Viviani has just found out the whole point of Deceuninck Quick-Step for today was the prospect of the Italian sprinter. Well, it's a long way from the finish line, 74 kilometres. Viviani is experienced enough to know that this position is recoverable, but that's exactly why Peter Sagan did that. He is at the very least stressing out an opponent.
It's brilliant, and it goes to show it's not a waste of effort. Now, even though Elia Viviani's got a strong team, he can make it back on. He's going to be burning matches. In the meantime, Peter Sagan's up here, 4th wheel, 3 teammates in front of him, not having to do any efforts. He'll be totally in control, stress-free. So he's actually scoring points here on Viviani, and not just physically, but psychologically.
1 Movistar rider, 2 Movistar. Nairo Quintana is towards the front. I think Mikel Landa is safely there as well. Greg van Avermaet is ominously close to the front of the race as well, in the company of Michael Scher. And then come the pack of Ineos riders. I think you caught a glimpse of Jakob Fuglsang, and there's a split, a definite, tangible split now. As about 30 riders break free. 19 seconds. The breakaway, if they carry on riding, will just be swept up very soon by this Bora Hansgrohe effort.
There are gaps, and it's up to Bora Hansgrohe. Just keep that pressure on to make Elia Viviani have to go dig deep to get back on. Here is Viviani. And Christoph.
Alexander Christoph caught out. So good wheel for Elia Viviani. He's got one teammate, and that's Jasper Philipsen, his very inexperienced sprinting lead-out man. And Christoph, Philipsen and Viviani are going to have to work together, but they're in a very, very perilous situation now. So that first and second group there seems to have got itself back together again. I'm discounting the breakaway, which is perhaps a little bit unfair because it looks like their days are numbered. But the first and second group in the peloton have got back together again. But the third group, I think Cofidis are riding, which would suggest to me that Jesus Herrada might well be the rider who has missed the cut. Their GC man.
Here goes second group on the road here. So that's so is it UAE on the front of Dan Martin?
Yeah. That is Sven-Erik Boström, his teammate as well. Looking for the rider Romain Bardet.
No, this is the third group on the road.
Yeah.
I think this is the third group. So that's the glimpse we caught before was the second group. So yeah, it's scattered around at the moment, and that's where often you'll see a lot of the teammates won't ride once they see a big GC riders there, because they say, well, actually, this is your responsibility. We're not going to bring this back. So if I was Dan Martin, I'd move to the back of that group and make sure nobody saw me.
Well, Danielos breaks the breakaway. That's done with, dispensed with, the three adventurers in the company of Greg Van Avermaet, who they see sweeping past him now. The man who was in the breakaway has his team riding on the front. It looks like Adam Yates is there, visibly in the right place, exactly where he needs to be, as CCC's Michael Scher now shares the work with Bora Hansgrohe. So we've got two teams determined to keep that big group away. There's Julien Alaphilippe at the back of that group. So you're right, David, the effort there was all for Julien Alaphilippe. Couldn't see Elia Viviani there.
So well, this is working out perfectly for Bora Hansgrohe, double stroke, not only for the stage win, but wrapping up as many points as can. If they bring that breakaway back, then Peter Sagan will be almost uncontested in going for the intermediate sprint points. 1 kilometre to the sprint, so now we see Peter Sagan already chasing that green jersey. And yeah, if you're going to do it, and this, he's really just making it clear to everybody that that's what he's here at this Tour de France to do.
Picking up points at the intermediate sprint. Points for the first 15 riders across the line. 20 points for the winner of the intermediate sprint. That's his first ambition now. Peter Sagan. His team have changed the nature of what looked like a very sedate run-in to the finish line in Brussels. But there we go. That's the damage that 1900 metres of cobbles can do when ridden like a Flandrian. Check the numbers off. Geraint Thomas, Bernal, most evidently there. And Sonny Colbrelli goes after points. Peter Sagan is straight onto him. And that's the battle between two sprinters. Interesting that Colbrelli now is challenging for green jersey points. He might want to save himself for the finish, but he's not interested. He wants to scoop up points here. Peter Sagan, though, opens his green jersey account. Greg Van Avermaet in third place. Sonny Colbrelli in second. Now what happens as De Koning Quick-Step managed just about to close the gap.
The greatest cyclist of them all, Eddy Merckx, donned the yellow jersey 96 times. The first of them extraordinarily here in Woluwe-Saint-Pierre, where Merckx also grew up and first rode a bike. His parents owned a grocery store in what was, until a few months ago, the Place des Bouvreuils, and since May has been the Square Eddy Merckx. Long before that, the yellow jersey got its world premiere in the 1919 Tour, 16 years after the race's first edition. Why yellow? Well, that was the colour of the newspaper which organised the race, L'Auto. It became maybe the most iconic garment in sport, and the yellow jersey icon par excellence is a bloke who used to live in there.
The jersey evoked a childhood dream. When you're a bike racer, as a youngster, you play at winning the yellow jersey in your neighbourhood. And the day that you actually have it, it's a dream to wear. I'm Eddy Merckx, and I won 5 Tour de France. The name Cannibal came from the daughter of Christian Raymond. He told her he's the one who doesn't leave us anything, and she said, so, he's a cannibal. It's a great source of pride to have worn the yellow jersey for such a long time, and on top of that with 5 victories on the Tour. When I started competing, I certainly didn't expect that. My favourite tour was definitely 1969. My first Tour de France remains, for me, the biggest win of my career. It's the most beautiful colour for me. The yellow, for me, is also the best memory. For me, it remains the embodiment of the most important race in cycling. When you watch, it's the jersey which stands out the most in the peloton. It's changed with the times, it's become more modern, but it is still just as beautiful.
The final phase of action is upon us now, just over 25 kilometres to go. Stéphane Rosetto of Cofidis has a 1 minute and 11 second advantage. It's pretty much the 4th phase of racing on this very interesting opening day of the 2019 Tour de France. The early breakaway, of course, featuring Greg van Avermaet, who scooped up mountain points on the famous climbs of the Muur de Grammont and the Bosberg, then went back into the peloton. Then it all went to sleep for a little while as 3 riders continue, but they were swept up when Bora Hansgrohe got on the front, hit the cobblestones, split the peloton in 2. Eventually, though, after Peter Sagan got himself those intermediate sprint points, it all came back together again in the peloton, and that was the moment when Stéphane Rosetto launched his solo attack, passing through all day long a landscape which has been rich in history and dripping with meaning. A day that celebrates the 50th anniversary of Eddy Merckx' first victory on the Tour de France in 1969, celebrates the 100th year of the yellow jersey, and has passed some major landmarks by the side of the roads in this historic part of Europe. Just recently we have left Waterloo behind us and Brussels lies ahead. Now Rosetto just lost about 15 seconds over the course of the last 5 or 6 kilometres, which is about par for the course for a catch to be effected within the final 10k, David. That looks like what you'd expect out of this situation.
Yeah, you would. I think there's too much at stake. The peloton's not going to play games. I think they'll soon be rotating out those riders if they haven't already at the front. It's always been the same 3 teams that are riding. Deceuninck, Team Jumbo-Visma and Lotto Soudal. Maxime Montfort is still there, George Bennett, so it is still the same riders. So it's interesting. I think they are in their final gasps here because it's been a big day out for them. And so they are now just emptying the tanks completely to try and reduce the workload required from the riders that will replace them before long. And then when that happens, we enter into truly the final phase of the race.
Slight uphill section here, bit of false flat. And a little bit more lateral motion comes into Stéphane Rosetto's impeccable riding position. Perhaps because he's going uphill, but perhaps also that's a sign that fatigue might just be beginning to overwhelm him.
Yeah, that rocking, that loss of form slightly, that is, generally would indicate that. That's where the muscles are getting tired. They can't quite keep you stable.
Fantastic crowds. Really overwhelming crowds. The pride flag as well being waved by the side of the road, alongside the national flags. As ever, the Tour de France is an opportunity for people not only to come out and cheer on the race, but also to show the world what it is that they believe in. And look at that, David. Absolutely fantastic. A great scene as all the colours of the peloton make their way up what was really quite a steep section there that Stéphane Rosetto was battling. They are 1 minute and 10 seconds behind, and still those 3 riders are trying to control a very impressive ride once again from Stéphane Rosetto.
Brussels' most eye-catching monument, the Atomium, was built in 1958 for the World's Fair, or Expo 58, a 102-metre tall stainless steel model of an iron crystal cell magnified 165 billion times. It was originally supposed to be destroyed a few months after the exhibition, but proved so popular with the Bruxellois that they kept it standing. If only they could have done the same with their countrymen's success in the Tour de France. The demolition order was put out on that after Lucien Van Impe's victory in 1976. Up to and including that date, Belgians had accounted for 18 Tour wins. In the 43 years since then, they have won not one single edition.
All the riders who growed up, let's say in the last 10, 15, 20 years, the big riders where they're looking to is what Tom Boonen, what this kind of riders and classic specialists.
Every village has a race every weekend, let's say, and they're all flat, so to become pro in Belgium, already you have to win a bunch of these flat and let's call them easy races. You have to be like a classics rider.
We are focusing more on classics. We have a cycling culture, but classics are closer to home, I think, and yeah, that's why everybody starts. So everybody who starts cycling comes with the idea going to be a classic rider.
There are many more good riders. If you see when you go back 20, 25 years ago, it's not that long. You had like 6, 7 nationalities at the start. Now you have like 30, 35 nationalities. If you see Carapaz, a rider from Ecuador, wins the Giro recently, now there's more and more competition.
It's very hard for a climber to become a professional rider in Belgium, not to lose motivation along the road or along the years. So that's one reason, one big reason. And apart from that, it's what do we care about? It's the classics.
One rider who didn't let his cravings for one-day classics like the Tour of Flanders also sate his appetite for the Tour de France was, of course, Eddy Merckx. Before he became the Cannibal, Merckx was known as the Ogre of Tervuren, where we are now and where he lived during the early years of his career. A few months ago, De Koning Quick-Step signed a teen phenomenon and mini Merckx called Remco Evenepoel. He isn't riding the Tour, but will be soon. Thanks to him, Belgium might also finally end its drought.
Well, if you've never been to see the Tour de France with your own eyes, look at these pictures and make your plans. Maybe even for this summer. It's a 3-week bike race after all. I'm sure you can take a few days off work and catch a ferry and get over there. And a crash! Riders down now. This is the first time we've seen them on the deck. I'm looking at the Astana pairing. That looks like it might be Fuglsang, you know. It is. Jakob Fuglsang is down and looks as though he's just picking up the pieces of whatever went on there. A couple of teammates with him. Maybe a touch of the wheels, but I'm pretty sure that's Fuglsang. Just getting to his feet now.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, you're right, it's Fuglsang. That was a silly crash because he was, they're all, but he was quite far back when that happened.
He's gone down hard.
Yeah.
It looks like his nose is actually bleeding as well, so it looks like he's hit his face quite hard there.
Yeah, that is, it's not ideal at the best of times, but in the finale of the Tour de France stage, he's definitely a little bit shocked and banged up there. I hope he's okay because he's clearly banged his head. The fact he's got blood in his nose and it looked like coming from under his glasses as well, so it's come down in his face slightly, so just got to hope that he didn't actually knock his head.
Yep. Yeah, an unhappy situation for Jakob Fuglsang at best.
I wonder whether his glasses have smashed into his face, maybe cut his eyebrow, which does sometimes happen.
The gaps just open up all the time, don't they? He's not holding the wheels, and there's so much. You can tell by the body language of his teammates how much concern there is as well.
Yeah, he's just waiting for the medical car, I think. I think he wants to get it looked at.
Well, it's the team car rather than the doctor's car. A discussion going on. Omar Fraile just allows a gap to open there, and Fuglsang's just looking disorientated. And his Tour de France is slightly imperiled at this moment.
Very much so. Oh yeah, there it is, his eyebrow. I think so. What's happened is the glasses have smashed against his face, and it looks like they've cut his eyebrow. So that's what he was asking the team car, just getting confirmation, getting to look at his face to see how it is. But he's not comfortable. He's not happy about this. This isn't a rider who's in a good place right now.
Okay, well, at the front of the race, Stefan Rossetto still got 3/4 of a minute. 15 kilometers to go. Astana under pressure here. Luis Leon Sanchez has dropped to the back of the peloton, I think with Alexei Lutsenko. Those two riders will hope we'll hope that the rest of the team bring Fuglsang bit by bit towards the peloton, and then they'll take it from there and try and re-establish his position towards the front of the peloton. Now they are moving past cars. That's a good sign of onward progress, at least.
Yeah, as I said, I think he's just starting to regroup a little bit now. Yeah. And also his teammates need to calm down, because obviously they weren't aware. When you hear your leaders down, you go back. The only thing you want to do is get them back. And you can be overexcited, and it takes a road captain or a leader to calm everyone down and just say, look, all we've got to do is get him on before the finish. Let's not race back on now. He's just trying to recover from the crash.
Well, hats off to Stefan Rossetto. He's making a real good fist of this. 38 seconds, 12.5k to go. The odds are still heavily stacked against him, but he's making them work. There's the doctor's car, there's the neutral service car, there is the back of the peloton, and there is Luis Leon Sanchez watching to see when those blue jerseys are going to be there. So well, I think for neutrals and all concerned with this race and people who wish him well, that's a good sight. You don't want to see a big favourite for the race eliminated from contention on stage 1. We look down on Woluwe, which is closely associated with Eddy Merckx. It's where he grew up his formative years, on the outskirts of the southern side of Brussels, as Jakob Fuglsang manages just about to get to the doctor's car and receive a little bit of treatment now. At a sensitive time in the race, he can't dally too long here. A little bit of magic spray.
The width of this road is making it very easy for the teams all to line up. We've got a mixture of GC teams, 10 kilometers to go, GC teams and sprinters teams. Majority GC teams, to be honest, who are just making sure that their leaders are safe, keeping them out of trouble. Rossetto, looks like it's all over. He's just getting swamped now by the team's positioning. There's not even a chase.
Yeah, just the worst kind of a road to defend that advantage that he had. Bora Hansgrohe and Peter Sagan with the green helmets and the white kit on the left-hand side of the road. Damiano Caruso, another rider who was hurt in that fall from Baudet Merida with his ripped shorts. He's safely back on as well. And now we're in Brussels. Huge crowds here in the capital city of Belgium. Warm sunshine. The race has come back together again.
80 kilometers an hour here, so it's this is an incredibly fast running, even by Tour de France standards. Look at that, they're spun out. They're in their biggest gears, probably 55.11 for some of them if they're lead out and they were prepared for this, but the majority of people would be 53.11 or 10. It's pretty. Now you can see now reboost. This repositioning is also important here, because as you can see the whiplash will be significant, and with this speed it's going to be nigh on impossible to move up.
A couple of riders just attached, one who's done all the work on the front, Dries Stevenens. Doesn't matter where he rolls in, his job is done for Elia Viviani and De Koning Quickstep.
Luke Kroner comes to the front. It's the gradient slightly changed. Team Ineos riding a great race as usual, so as we're so accustomed to seeing them in the finals like this, matching the sprinters teams. The Bora Hansgrohe rider comes to a standstill at the barrier on the exit of the corner. He certainly did reach his terminal velocity.
3.2 kilometres to go. Pretty soon the GC favourites are safe, and then it's over to the sprinters' trains to take it up. Which one will dominate? Will it be Jumbo-Visma? Will it be Bora Hansgrohe? Or will it be Lotto Soudal? Or will someone else pull a surprise from the pack?
Yeah, it is a little bit unknown. I think even for the peloton, they're not sure what to expect, what lead-out is going to be the best. For sure, the eyes are on Jumbo-Visma, Lotto Soudal, but Bora Hansgrohe is not quite as strong, I'd say, as those other two teams, but Peter Sagan doesn't need a big lead-out. He just needs one rider to pilot him into the right place, onto the tail of the right lead-out.
Through 3 kilometres to go. And now it is over to the sprinters' teams. Alex Dowsett still setting things up. Rick Zabel and Marco Haller on his wheel. How much longer can he go? Good ride from him. Tish Benoot takes over from Lotto Soudal, the man who won Strade Bianche a couple of years ago. And he can set a pace. On his wheel then comes Jens Kukelera, then the big figure of Roger Kluge. And disappearing behind him, you have Jasper de Boost and then Caleb Ewan.
Alaphilippe trying to set up his teammates. Alaphilippe being a lead-out man of sorts, but he's got, look at his wheel, he's got 2-3 riders. They're all there in the different jerseys.
Yep. Yeah, Alaphilippe on the front. Then comes the Danish national champion, Michael Mørkøv. On his wheel, then the lead-out man for Elia Viviani, the Argentinian Mats Richesi. De Koning Quickstep with 4 riders on the front. Let's look for the figure of Peter Sagan, so unrecognisable in his regular team kit there. Just a little bit boxed in and fighting for space on the left-hand side of the road through 2 kilometres.
This is a remarkable ride by Alaphilippe, who you wouldn't expect to be able to do such a high-speed lead-out, which goes to show just how strong he is at the moment.
Yeah, Caleb Ewan looks like Lotto Soudal has been a bit knocked off the front front. They need to regroup. At the moment, Caleb Ewan just has one rider to work with, and that's his final lead-out man, Jasper de Boost. And don't forget the nature of the final kilometre. It drags up to the finish line, and strength in numbers at the front, which De Koning Quickstep now have, will be very important. That church there marks the point at which the race switches, turns right, and then the final phase is engaged. Oh, big crash now. Riders down in the middle of the road there. Just looking at one of the Bahrain Merida riders down very heavily. Touch of the wheels. AG Touar also involved. Well, that's Dylan Groenewegen. Groenewegen's on the ground. That is Dylan Groenewegen, one of the big favourites for the day. Danielos takes things up, trying to set it up for Peter Sagan, who's lurking in around about 10th place. Christoph is still there. Looking for space now. Jasper Philipsen almost comes to grief on the barriers as Katusha Alpecin launched an attack on down the middle of the road. There's Sagan looking comfortable. Sagan gets on the wheel of one of the riders from Bahrain Merida as Michael Mercure takes things up. Richese is going to be sprinting instead from De Koning Quickstep. Over to Richese, he looks round. He's looking for Elio Viviani, realises he's not there. And Max Richese sprints instead from De Koning Quickstep. This could be a sensational victory, but it's a long way to go still to get to the finish line. Michael Matthews on his wheel. Then comes Sagan. He runs out of gas, does Richese. Matthews takes it up. Sagan on his wheel. Viviani's still there. Over to them now. Sonny Colbrelli coming with a charge from Bahrain Merida. Colbrelli, Sagan. Colbrelli has his nose in front now. But here comes Peter Sagan. Is it going to be victory at the first opportunity? Once again for Sagan. He hits the front. Here comes Ewan. He's leaving it late. And mighty close over the line between Wout van Aert and Peter Sagan. Van Aert deputising for his main sprinter, Dylan Groenewegen, was invisible to the very last moment, and that was close.
And this is what happened, as I was saying earlier, the fact that it had been such a fast run-in. Everybody was so fresh, everybody's trying to be up there, and that's what's caused all this drama. And there's the crash there, there's the first big one. Then we think there was no, that is Groenewegen there in the middle of the road. And here's a sprint. Colbrelli goes first. Michael Matthews was stuck, he had to go. Peter Sagan looking strong, but there's Wout van Aert in the yellow jersey.
Well, forgive me, I assume that was Van Aert. I'm thinking that's Mike Turnison.
Mike Turnison.
My apologies if that's the case. I assumed it was the man who can do everything. Mike Turnison appears to have got it instead. He came from nowhere, the rider from Jumbo-Visma, but it looks like he's ridden to victory. Mike Turnison is the winner of stage one and take the most unexpected yellow jersey, bar none. We expected Groenewegen, we thought it was Van Aert. In the end, though, it's one of the lead-out trains for both men. Mike Turnison.
And there's his name on the official result, just so that he believes it himself. Peter Sagan was the best of the green jersey contenders, not that that'll be much consolation to him after coming so close. Caleb Ewan had to stop and start as he came past Sonny Colbrelli for third place. Colbrelli finished fifth. Jakob Fuglsang recovered from his crash to come in with the main field. Geraint Thomas's was in the final 3 kilometres, so he got the time of the main field despite rolling in behind it, along with quite a few others, including the Jumbo-Visma rider who was supposed to win the stage. Dylan Groenewegen was 174 places behind his lead-out man.